If you're someone who typically thinks, I interview pretty well, but for some reason you haven't been getting to the offer, I'm going to share with you 4 ways that your interview career stories can set you apart from everyone else. Now, you probably already know by now that I am an Apple girl. I love my Mac. I love my iPhone. I've got the iPad. I've got all the things. But you don't know the story about how Mac and I met, do you? I'm going to tell you this beautiful love story only because it's going to show you how you can set yourself apart, just like Apple set itself apart for me. It was about 7 years ago, and I used to have this bright pink laptop. It was a Sony, and it had just died. It lasted literally like 10 years. It felt super exciting to get something new, but also really nerve wracking, kind of like when I went to the mechanic, because I don't know what's inside of a laptop, just like I don't know what's inside of a car. What if it dies? What if it's slow? I'm going to be stuck with a clunker for 10 years. But I had just been introduced to Dell computers and I heard that they were pretty decent and pretty affordable. So I walk into Best Buy and head over to Dell. Now, on the side of each Dell laptop, there's a half sheet and it tells me all the features. It's this bulleted list and it's pretty much everything I had in mind. All standard stuff, right? 15-inch monitor, check. 2 gigabyte memory, awesome. Windows pre installed, works for me. And this should work for email, for work docs, for all the things, right? So now I have this Dell box under my arm and I'm walking to the register. But on my way, I see the Apple section. And this quote caught my attention. I think it's been their tagline for like a really long time. It just says, think different. And the more I read and the more I watched, even in just those 10 minutes, the more I realized that Apple had answered questions I hadn't even thought of yet. And it had addressed needs that I hadn't come across yet. Like, I don't know, the fact that in a couple of years I would quit my job and start a new business and even host a podcast. It's like they knew. But of course, I didn't at the time. So I sit there, having already budgeted for the box in my hand. And of course, no one can see it, but I'm having this major internal battle. I'm realizing that even at half the price, the laptop in my hand is too expensive. I mean, Dell will do the job today. Mac has me thinking about the future. And at this point, I can already tell they're thinking miles ahead of me and they have all the bases covered. I'm so sorry. I told the associate, you got to take this Dell back. And Mac and I have been together ever since. Now, I don't know what the future holds, but at this point, I trust that as long as I have a Mac, as long as I have an Apple computer, we can figure things out because I know how the people at Apple think. And if you can put into words how you think, employers will start looking past your standard qualifications and see your unique value that can't be replicated anywhere else. And so that's what you and I are going to do today. We're going to talk about how to turn straightforward facts into persuasive career stories that influence hiring decisions so that your future is in your hands, not in your employer's hands. Hey there, this is the Uncoming Career Podcast, and every week I help you strategize your brand, articulate your distinct value, and show up powerfully and authentically so that you can land better offers faster. I don't do hacks or quick fixes, so you won't ever hear me tell you to add those tiny keywords to your resume in white font. Instead, you and I are going to focus on building a brand and a strategy that you can use now and for a lifetime. My name is Patricia. I'm a MAG enthusiast, a counseling faculty turned career coach, and your podcast host. I do this work because I remember when sharing my value made me feel like I was bragging, and that held me back for years. I saw firsthand the moment when it clicked for me, and I realized that sharing your value is helping people make better decisions. And so it's serving others, not just serving yourself. And there's nothing wrong with the win win of serving both others and yourself. In fact, that's the best possible outcome, and that's why I'm here to help you strategize and communicate your value so that both you and your future employer can have that win win partnership. And of course, it always helps if you get there a whole lot faster, doesn't it? Now, the worst thing is knowing your value, knowing your potential, and either not feeling like you can share that unapologetically or not having the words to share it as powerfully as you feel it on the inside. So that's why I do this work. And hopefully, in today's episode, we can start to bring some of that power into your career stories too. Now, stick around to the end because it's going to become crystal clear why typical career stories, the usual STAR method, it's not really cutting it. And I'm going to show you why it can feel hard to break the mold, but why it's easier than you think. Now, before we get into things, if you've been here a while, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what's most helpful for you from today's episode. I've actually set up a voice memo page so that you can leave me a message. It's at theuncommoncareer.com/voice. Let me know what question came up for you today, or send me a comment and let me know if today was helpful for you. I'd love to hear what insight resonated with you and what's on your mind regarding your job search. Again, head over to theuncommoncareer.com/voice to leave me a voice memo. I listen to every single one, I reply to every single one, and you might even get featured on the podcast. Now, I've been studying branding and storytelling for years, and the biggest missing piece from so many interview career stories is the part you don't say out loud. Maybe it's because it's unconscious or subconscious for some, but what I'm talking about is your strategy. You show them the before, that's the situation or the background, and you show them the after, which is the result. But most people miss the reason for the change, the transformation. And that's what makes a career story less about the individual outcome that you achieved at one point in time in one location, and more about your overall thinking and your potential in future scenarios. Remember Mac versus Dell? Dell met the qualifications today. It checked the boxes. But Mac helped me to see its potential by showing me how they think. Now I can trust them for future issues because I've seen how they think differently, not necessarily what features are in this particular laptop today. Most people share star stories, right? Situation, task, action, result. But notice there's no strategy in star. You don't share your thinking, by default at least. You only share the action that you took and what it resulted in. And so to share your strategy, you do need to share your thinking. And when you're really good at your work, you notice patterns and you create generalizations and you really more intuitively get the work done and do a great job at it. And so it might feel like you're thinking less, but you're actually thinking at a higher level, even though it feels like you're on autopilot. The goal today is to bring that thinking to the surface and then to articulate it for your employer. Now, there's four ways that we do that. You do that by thinking bigger, by thinking in frameworks, by thinking ahead, and by thinking like them. So, first, thinking bigger. This means that you don't just have your particular role in mind or whatever is within your scope. Even if in your scope there's multiple departments and there's maybe multiple branches, locations, etc., you still want to think bigger than where you currently are. This means looking at the interdependence between different areas, thinking bigger, meaning keeping in mind everything that's going on at your organization. It could also mean thinking bigger, meaning the industry, the economy, the world, technology, other trends. Okay, so now it's your turn. Think about your most recent achievement. What other teams, departments, areas did your work interact with? What areas did it flow to or did it flow from? And as your work unfolded, what did you need to consider in these other areas in order to do your job well? This tells the employer that you understand the organization beyond your immediate job, and it signals leadership skills whether or not you're seeking a leadership position. Okay, so let's pop into number two, thinking in frameworks. If you can simplify a process, if you can make complexity clear and distill it down to easy to absorb models, then not only can you work at a higher level, but other people can now see your thinking and can easily follow your lead. Now, that's really helpful both for the people you're leading, but also super helpful in an interview. Frameworks cut the noise out of a 50-step process and they let the interviewer grasp your thinking, all without getting stuck in the weeds or remembering a ton of detail. Now, this instantly elevates how you communicate your value. And that's because clarity comes from expertise. I think the line is simple genius. That's what you're going for here. You're going for simple genius. Now, to give you an example, if you're in the program, we create a framework as part of your interview kit. And actually, we create one to share with each of your career stories so that you can incorporate phrases into your interview that sound a little bit like, I knew we had to shift our culture, and I use a three-phase framework that I've developed over time. First, I understood the team, the leader, and the employee perspectives at every level. Second, I created a strategy and timeline for the shift. And third, I used a tiered management system. Now, let me break these down a little bit further. This statement does some pretty heavy lifting for you. Now, yes, it does make your process easy to understand, easy to remember, and, best of all, easy to share when you're not in the room. But also, you just communicated that this isn't your first rodeo. You've done this enough times that you have a framework for it, and that you're not only comfortable with this challenge, but that you're really clear on how to tackle it. After the framework, you move on to explain the process in more detail, but now they have a mental map to follow along with, and they know this isn't a one time outcome. You've created a system that you can replicate. Now, for any achievement that you share, you probably have a whole series of actions that you took to get from point A to point B. And it might take you one, two, maybe even 3 minutes to walk me through all of it. This series of actions, they're helpful, but they won't apply to every context. And so you need to break these actions into a framework that anyone in your space can understand and implement. Now, I know it can feel really odd at first to create frameworks for yourself, but the beautiful thing is that you do make things happen in your very own way. And so you already have a proprietary framework. And this is especially true if you're mid career or a seasoned professional. You've got the framework, you just haven't articulated it yet. Now, if you prefer that you and I create yours together and that it aligns with a larger brand system, then let's start a conversation and see what that might look like. You can schedule a call at theuncommoncareer.com/call. So again, that is theuncommoncareer.com/call. Okay, so number one was thinking bigger. Number two was thinking in frameworks. And now, number three, we're thinking ahead. This means that you anticipate, you plan forward, you project, and you prepare to both leverage opportunities and to avoid negative consequences. The goal here is to show that you are a proactive leader, not a reactive employee. Thinking ahead means that you're asking the right questions, like, what will this team need 6 months from now that they don't fully see yet? Here comes my Mac with anticipating needs and questions and issues that I didn't even know to ask. But now, when they showed me, hey, one day you might need this feature or you might need this type of, solution, and we are going to provide it for you today, that was a huge weight off my shoulders. And that's what you're doing for the employer too. A couple other questions here are what risks and bottlenecks or what trends should this role or this team or this company anticipate before it becomes urgent? And one of my favorite questions, what's a small thing I can leverage today to make a big impact over time? If you have one of those small things that you've leveraged in the past that ended up making a really big impact over time, this is perfect. It's these types of questions and these types of stories and this type of information that's going to position you as someone who strategizes, who stabilizes teams, and who future proofs the organization. So, when it comes to your own career achievement, what did you notice? What did you anticipate or what did you plan for? And how did that impact the outcome? What's the bad thing that you avoided or the good thing that your work enabled? This is going to make a really big difference in your interview, but not as big as the last one, which is arguably the most important. This is thinking like them. So think bigger, think in frameworks, think ahead, and think like them. Your goal here is to understand what leaders truly care about, whether or not they ask it in an interview. What worries them? What do they really need? What do they want to ask? And what would they love to see happen? A question you always want to ask before any interview is what about hiring you might make the hiring leader nervous? What assumptions might they make? And how can you address those before they even come up? This is one of the most helpful strategic thinking pillars because if you don't address what they're worried about, if you don't address the questions they have, and worse, the assumptions they make all on their own, then that's going to result in answering their questions, maybe even with textbook correct answers, but never getting to what really matters to them. And ultimately, you won't get that callback. So think like them to get in their mind and gather intel from their perspective, and then strategize your interview to speak directly to what they care about most. This is a great way to address gaps in your experience, a change in your industry, or even a prior termination. By thinking like the employer, you now address the question they may not have asked. And that's a huge shift from tactical, let me give you straightforward answers to your straightforward questions, to the more strategic responses. and strategic communication, no matter what they ask. This is so valuable. Thinking strategically about your career is a process. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's not usually a one and done. But once it becomes a natural part of your communications toolkit, it is so worth it. And it helps you to instantly stand out in your job search where employers call you back because they can see your thinking. It's made clear. You brought your thinking to the surface. And now they know your outcomes aren't a fluke. They happened because it's who you are. Communicating like this is how you turn information into influence. And even better, it's how you go from generically qualified to distinctly valuable. It is totally a life skill, and you just can't get that from the tactical job search strategies. Okay, so let's recap what we've talked about today. We've covered 4 ways to show hiring leaders your strategic thinking skills. That's thinking bigger, thinking in frameworks, thinking ahead, and thinking like them. All 4 of these tell the employer you know what's coming, you know how to tackle it, and you know how to leverage it for company success. And all of that starts with going beyond the basic facts and beyond the checkboxes. And if you're tired of taking hours applying and hearing nothing back, and if you're tired of taking hours applying and hearing nothing back, or telling yourself that last month it didn't happen again, but this month I'm really going to kick it into gear, then dream with me for a second. Imagine bringing a clear, strategic, and compelling communication to your branding and to your job search and getting responses that tell you, you've really got something here. Well, that's the work that you and I can do together in the Uncommon Careers Job Search Coaching Program. We start with our signature deep dive brand sprint, where you storytell through your career history, picking up all your most compelling achievements to develop your brand materials so that employers sit up and actually call you back. Then you'll elevate your interview. You got a taste of that with today's episode, but you'll know what to say and you won't ever again worry about drawing a blank or about not being strategic enough because you'll have a complete interview kit and, even better, the skills to update, change, or recreate your communication strategy anytime you want. You'll set up a job search that naturally turns your focus to action with our in-house AI platform. And my favorite, you'll save time and a ton of energy every week with plug and play materials that are 100% custom to your brand, your career goals, and your job search strategy. It's you and me from our first call all the way to your first 90 days. And if that sounds like it would make your job search click into place, then the most helpful next step is for you and I to talk through your goals and to get a bit of clarity. Then we'll talk about your strategy. And if it turns out that partnering up might be a good fit, then we can talk more about the program. Whether or not we work together, this conversation sets you up with a solid foundation for your job search. So I encourage you to head over to theuncommoncareer.com/call to see available times this week. Again, that's theuncommoncareer.com/call. Listen, I am beyond excited for the work that we're going to do together, whether you're coming back for next week's episode or if you're joining the program so that you and I can partner up and go all in on your search. Until then, know that we're cheering you on, we're praying for you, and we'll see you on the next one. Hey, thanks for listening. I really appreciate you spending time with me today. If you found this episode helpful, please tap the 5-star review on the show's homepage in your podcast app. It would absolutely make my day, and it helps others discover the Uncommon Career Podcast. Now, to download your free career resources and learn how I help seasoned professionals land amazing offers in as little as 90 days, click on the link in the description or go to theuncommoncareer.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.